Ah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or night or afternoon or whenever the fuck it is that you're seeing this. So yeah, wasn't really planning this today. I was actually planning on doing something else, but spur of the moment decision here to go ahead and go through with it. I've been saying I was going to do this for a long time, so I decided to pull the trigger like right now. F20 and F22C from the S2000. Um, oh yeah, welcome to VHP Engines, by the way. Yeah, I forgot to say that. So anyway, F20 and F22C engine, right? We're talking about the S2000 here. We're not going to go into details on the materials of the engine and all that shit here, mainly because of the fact that the FRM, which these blocks are, these are FRM sleeve blocks and stuff. So I covered that already in the H22 stuff. I was talking about that. So the reason why I've appreciated this engine so much, I love this engine so much, is because of the fact that it's people are always pushing like so much out of these, like pushing the threshold of these engines and their capabilities and eclipsing all the time what we thought was possible and capable out of these fucking engines. I think that out of all the things, like the Ks I've gone on about a bunch of times too, saying that the K20 and K24, those blocks are just like exceptional. And then there's that whole debate back and forth with the J series and all that stuff, which I think the sleeves, the block itself is proven to be able to handle some serious output without reinforcement. But then there's that that iffiness about the internals, the stock internals, being able to hold up to these high insane amount of power levels. Just to touch on that briefly real quick, the J series, there's guys out there that were doing like 700 horsepower, putting out 700 horsepower on a stock J. Now about that, I went into debate with a couple people on that. That stock J eventually blew up. Like there was one guy that I dug into research, said he did like 20 passes and then he gave out. Now the difference here between the J and the K series and the F20 and F22 is that we've seen outputs of upwards into the 700 horsepower range without the block failing, like being driven on and driven on and driven on and it not fucking giving out. Now, going into doing this, or the early research in this shit, I was talking to a friend of mine who I know down in Miami who's put out a couple of these, or done a couple of these S2K builds for people. I was going back, this guy went to a Premier shop. The shop put the F22 for him together. The guy went out, had it tuned, and like it blew up right after the dyno or on the dyno or some shit like that. So he got a hold of it. My friend got a hold of it and did a rebuild, and I think the car put down like 600 horsepower stock block. The reason why I hit him up is because I didn't really know a lot of people that had done that kind of build, and I know for a fact that he's done the build and how much power it put down. So I asked him, and he's like all stock internals. Now, for those of you who don't know, the F20 and F22s they come with forged internals from Honda. Now, that seems like it kind of rings a bell. Like there might be some other engines out there that Honda's put down that also have that forged internal stock. I don't remember if that is the case. I don't remember which engines that has, but the F22 and F20C comes with forged internals from the factory. And so that's lends a heavy credence towards why these things put down so much power. And so like I said, 700 horsepower. Have been known to put down 700 horsepower stock block. Now, me personally, would I want to push that? No, because I don't like to push beyond the limits of what other people have tested. I'm a safe kind of builder here when it comes to like squeezing out power. Whatever the highest bar has been set for a build, unless it's something I'm doing that's cheap. Whatever the highest bar has been set for something that's build, I like to build underneath that. So if 700 horsepower is what somebody's done, like stock block with no problems, yeah, let's keep it around 550, 600, because that way, you're well within safe range of testing territory, and you can keep up with that. There was actually a guy that I knew, if for you guys that have been here for a while and watched my story and talk about how I was in El Paso for a while, knew a mechanic out there. There was a guy that worked with that mechanic, and I was talking about, or some S2Ks came up in a conversation one day, and we were friends on Facebook, and I seen, I guess I saw the post because he commented on it, and somebody was asking about S2000, and the guy laughed. He's like, "They're garbage." I was like, "Excuse me? Like, you're a Honda mechanic, and you're talking about the S2000 garbage?" And I already know in my head why he was saying that, because when he was working with that guy over in El Paso, uh, they are like two or three different S2Ks that they had in their shop, and that passed through there. But no, you can't just have a few turds that have been beat on by God only knows how many people come through your place of business there and just say they're all garbage. Why? Did they all have the exact same problem? And I know they didn't. So, how the fuck is you gonna say those are garbage, but then like you can go on YouTube or you can just hit the internet in general and see like how much fucking work that these cars are putting down with these stock blocks. Um, there's a reason why people aren't sleeving and going all kinds of crazy build with these for the most part, because they do so much stock. Why would you waste that money when you can reach any power level or just about any same power level that you could possibly want? Me personally, I've said a bunch of times, 500 horsepower is my limit because of how much shit you need to go into it to go past that successfully. But I'm not. I guess this is just talking about the accolades so much of what it can do without really having to modify it. The thing you have to worry about, like with the K series and shit, and as rear-wheel drive problems, is you have to worry about breaking like some transmissions and drive shafts and differentials that you got to worry about, because when they're only so big, meant for like 200 horsepower, and then you're pushing it like to insane levels. You're quadrupling fucking the power. So anyway, but of course, I wanted to look at this with something to to be able to modify, like the fact that the pistons and rods are forged, and like normally when you're looking at these Honda engines, a lot of times people will say the weakest part on them is the piston. But thinking about failures from these S2000s and shit, like what these high powered ones, what do you see? Is it detonation that really kills these engines, or is it slinging a rod out of the block? And then, so I may be wrong. This is something I didn't do like millions of tons of research on. But this is something that from people that I know that have had these high powered S2Ks, usually when they fail, it's because a rod has been thrown out of the block. So it got me thinking, like, well, it's a fucking forged piston, it's gonna be floating. So you could probably put a stock piston on an aftermarket rod. And yeah, I was digging around and I saw an article from was it Modified Magazine from back in 2010. I'll leave a link in the description, that they built an engine, or they built a S2K engine, and they used stock pistons with aftermarket rods. So I think that they had to, modify the bushings or whatnot to fit. It wasn't a direct fit onto the rod, but this is one of those few times where I would say that it's worth, spending the money to go to a machine shop or whatnot to have it modified. The description they gave for making the pistons work in the article was the rods, the small ends were honed to accommodate the wrist pin. That's kind of like this is kind of iffy wording there, because honing. I guess it just depends on how tight the fit is. I guess I would have to actually have the piston, wrist pin, and the rod I was going to use in hand to look at it to see if it was close enough where you could do some light modifications and light material removing to get that in there, or if it's something that would probably need to be taken to a machine shop. But either way, I think that work or the machine shop would be worth it, to kind of guarantee like a little bit of a bulletproofness. I think that I wouldn't really worry too much about going crazy for building or using aftermarket rods, unless it was something I planned to keep for an extremely long time and was always planning to beat on it. Because I think that we've seen enough people out there making really high numbers that have no problem. There's guys out there that I know. There's a dude that I've mentioned also a couple times for Miami, Keys, who had a 500 horsepower S2K that was all stock block, and he was not only dailying the car, but he was racing on it on the weekends. And as far as I know, and I've seen every once in a while, that car is still running strong and healthy, and it's been over a year since the guy's had the car. So I think that in stock form, completely stock form, they're good. Oh, also I want to mention one more thing in that article. They did, because I think the S2K is like it's pretty high compression. It's 11 something. So they put a really thick ass head gasket on it to drop it down to 9. I wouldn't say I would do that. I wouldn't deliberately drop the compression on an engine just because of the fact that so many people have done a stock already and proven that it works fine. I would leave the compression just where it's at to help with the turbo spool up. Plus, it might even allow you to get a smaller turbo, so you won't have to worry about as much lag. All right, yeah. So turns out this video really isn't as long as I thought it was going to be. You know, that's because when I really started focusing on it and thinking about it, there really wasn't too much shit to go into, because, you know, the whole FRM sleeve thing has already been covered in another video, and I guess in the end it's just to say that these blocks are really fucking strong. Yeah, all right. So I guess next time I'm back here behind the camera, it's probably going to be for that shout out that I've been saying I was going to do forever. The main reason why I haven't done it yet is because I got to talk to the guy first. You know, I want to use his logo for the video, and I want to just check and make sure it's okay, because his posts and shit aren't shareable. He keeps them on lock, so that kind of implies to me that he, you know, doesn't want just anybody to spread his shit around, which I think is kind of weird. But at the same time, too, his actual Facebook is also his business page at the same time, so I don't think he'd be against adding people. I'm not sure if he's private or not, but, you know, it would kind of be a waste of a shout out, you know, for me to tell you guys to go check him out if he's not going to accept you. So I'm going to check with him to make sure. But I really think this is something that you guys are going to want to check into, because I shared like one of his little posts that he did the other day on Facebook, so that way you can get an idea of what I'm seeing that he comes out with. It's kind of like Evan's tuning with the dyno charts, except for you get like a lot more in-depth details and description of what happened before and what happened after and what he could do to make more power. And it's just good to be able to see, you know, that way you can see and tick off these little like, oh yeah, and that's, you know, that, you know, I'm thinking we'll make this power, and it looks like it did. All right, so I know I just kind of did a little mini shout out there, but I'll get to it eventually. All right, guys. So for you guys that are new, social media shit's in the description below. You can hit me up privately if you want to. If you try to message me on YouTube, there's a good chance I won't see it, because I very rarely check my YouTube inbox. Like once every couple of months. So yeah, better to hit me up on social media. I use Facebook, generally use for news updates for what's going on with the channel. Instagram, you'll see, you know, whatever project I'm working on, pictures pop up there usually before I make a video. If I'm out working in the shop, you know, Twitter I use for some small stuff every once in a while, but it's not too big. I guess Snapchat is the last thing. Snapchat's probably the thing I've been most active on recently. Everybody who adds me on Snapchat gets a follow back, and if I see car stuff in your story, I tend to peek in on it. All right, guys. So thanks for watching, and peace. See y'all later.